Welcome to the 2021 Virtual OAC Conference. My name is Betty Chung, and I'm past president of OAC, and I'm pleased to open today's event with the current president, Dr. Grad. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic required us to delay our in-person event this year, but we felt it is important to move forward as there are many exciting things happening in the limb loss field, and staying connected at events like these can only help to sustain the incredible growth in research, clinical practice, education, and advocacy we're now seeing in the Canadian field. Now, we understand that navigating in a virtual world can be a bit challenging for some of us. So before I give my official opening remarks, you should all receive information from our conference host, UHN Conference Services, about the platform being used today, Remo. In case not, I would like to flag that using Google Chrome and Firefox is the best. And the platform can only be seen on a desktop and laptop computer. And you might want to connecting from your firewall and VPN to maximize viewing. We currently are sitting in the main conference room, and you can see all the necessary links to access to our sponsor booths, agenda, and how to access the scavenger hunt and conference evaluation survey. We also now would like to show you a quick video to show you how to move around Remo. So I hope the video has helped you to better understand Remo. But if you have any question, feel free to contact the tech table at UHN. Now, with those technical details behind us, I would like to officially kick off our opening remarks. For those who do not know us well, the Ontario Association for Amputee Care works to provide collaborative healthcare to maximize outcomes for Ontarians living with limb loss. One way to achieve this goal is to host our biannual conference to help strengthen professional ties in the community and to build new relationships by exchanging important knowledge on what is happening in the limb loss field. This event was organized by a number of our OAC members working in St. John Rehab and West Park Healthcare in Toronto, as well as members from St. Joseph Healthcare in London, Ontario. And with our fearless leader, Dr. Sandra Hissig, by the time that we cannot have the in-person, with Dr. Hissig, determination and dedication, we work up and to plan to come up with today's agenda, inviting the speaker, obtain some sponsorship, and promote the event. And that's why we're all here today. So let's give them a virtual round of applause for organizing this great event. Now, before I turn over to Dr. Grad, I would like to flag that we'll be asking for your feedback about today, and the link will be sent out later for you to complete. For those who complete the survey and agree to share with your email and also your name, you'll be entered into a draw of one of the two $25 gift prize. And the survey will stay open until 6 p.m. As well, our host UHN conference will be sending you a certificate of attendance. It will be emailed to you following the conference. And some of today's slides will be made available on the OAC website, which is oaac.on.ca. We also want to thank our premier sponsor, OSOR and IPSO Canada, whose generous contributions has helped us to make today possible. Part of OSOR contribution is sponsoring our scavenger hunt draw, and that I will talk a little bit later. And IPSO Canada sponsor our poster competition. We are also very grateful for our networking and exhibition hall sponsor for their support for this event, Thomson Rogers Lawyers, Ontario Association of Prosthetics and Orthotics, Thrive Magazine, Naked Prosthetics, and Gluckstein Lawyers. As I just mentioned, there will be a $100 PC brand e-gift card grand prize drawn, sponsored by OSOR Canada. And only those who complete the exhibitor scavenger hunt quiz will be eligible to win. So if you haven't had a chance already, don't forget to visit our sponsors during our networking breaks. So right now, let's please give us all our sponsors a big virtual round of applause. Again, thank you for joining us. And now I turn the time to Dr. Grad.
Hi, thank you very much, Betty, and welcome. I am Sharon Grad, and I'm the current OAC president, and would like to echo Betty's thanks and gratitude for the organizing committee and to all of our great sponsors. Although we couldn't get together in person this year, we hope that we'll be able to have our in-person conference in Hamilton on April 29th and 30th, 2022 at the Sheraton in Hamilton. So please save the date and get your research going. We have a wonderful agenda today and on a host of different topics, and I would just like to flag how excited we are about our keynote speakers. For our scientific keynote, I'm pleased we were able to have Dr. Joe Chierniecki from the University of Washington in Seattle. He'll be presenting on his work related to enhancing amputation-level decision-making that emphasizes what matters most to people with limb loss. He'll be kicking off our afternoon session at 12:30 today. As well, I'm pleased that our consumer keynote will be from the Amputee Coalition of Canada, which is now under new leadership from the President Chris Marshall and Vice President Andreazwallow. We will hear from them a little later this morning, and it will be great to see what their national vision will be for the limb loss community moving forward. Although it would have been great to have an in-person event this year, going forward, it has enabled us to bring in national and international set of speakers and audience. When I looked at our registration numbers this week, we had over 200 people registered, which included close to 40 people from British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. We also have approximately 145 people from Ontario. We have 17 people from Quebec and also have representation from Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, and even a couple of United States visitors. Even though the OAC is a provincial organization, our event today is truly national in scope. We are glad we were able to bring in speakers from around the country to share their perspectives and to reflect that OAC is playing an important role in promoting standards of care, research, and advocacy in the limb loss field, not only in Ontario, but that it is also having a national impact as well. At this point, once again, I'd like to take a moment to thank one of our valued conference sponsors, OSER Canada, and then Janet Campbell from West Park Healthcare Centre will introduce our first set of speakers for today. I'd just like to thank you again for supporting our efforts and hope you enjoyed today's conference. I also would like to send out personal thanks to everybody in the organizing committee for all of your hard work in doing this, especially Sander, who again was the brainchild for this event today. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy your day's events.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sharon and Betty, for those opening remarks. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Janet Campbell. I'm a physio from West Park Healthcare Centre, and I'm one of the scientific organisers for today. And I will serve as moderator for the main conference session. So we have a lot of great talks lined up for today, but also want to remind people to visit all of the excellent posters, which can be found on the main conference website under the e-posters tab. I just want to flag that if you have any questions for the presenters, please type them into the Q&A chat tab during the presentation. It should be at the top right corner of your screen. And we may have opportunity to raise your hand during the Q&A time at the end of the presentations, if we have time. Please leave the chat for general comments and type your questions into the presenters into the Q&A so that they don't get missed. So at this point, it is my privilege to introduce two great physiatrists, Dr. Amanda Mayo from Sunnybrook and St. John's Rehab, and Dr. Michael Devlin from West Park in the Toronto area, who will talk about building national capacity in the limb loss field. Thank you, Amanda. I see you, and I'm sure Mike will be joining us shortly.
Oh, Amanda, you'll just have to unmute your mic. There
Hi,
you go.
I think Mike is having technical difficulties, so I'm hoping he's going to join me. If not, I'll wing it, and we have done this presentation together. I'm just going to share my screen, and thank you for everybody for attending today. It's nice to see. I think we have about 204 online right now, which is great. Just bear with me as I try to pull up my PowerPoint. And I see Mike. Mike made it.
Yeah.
So
Can
Christian,
you hear
I
me?
know we just tried. I can hear you. And Christian, I know we just tried and I shared my screen, but now I can't see my windows.
Tell you what, I'll try mine.
Okay, now I do.
Nope. Oh. I think just to confirm, I am seeing your slides full screen, Amanda, on this end.
Okay, Mike, can you see them?
No.
Okay, so are you okay if I sort of run through and then, or do you want to speak? Sorry. Okay, well, I guess we'll keep the day on going. And Christian, please let me know if you can't sort of see my slides as we run through them. Again, sorry, Mike, that you haven't been able to connect. But really, Mike and I are talking about building national capacity in limb loss research. We're both in Toronto, but we're pleased to see, people from across the country, and we have some American attendees as well, and really trying to in more of a national presence in limb loss research in Canada. So our objectives today are really to discuss the past, the present, and the future. And neither of us have any conflicts to share. The past, we sort of reflected, there's been a lot of clinically based research, and definitely that's what OAC has been highlighting in the past, and prosthetic, more componentry based research, but not a lot of interaction between the two in Canada. When we look at sort of our clinically based, it's been sort of smaller with single centers, not a lot of numbers, and we know it's very hard and challenging to recruit patients. It's difficult to compare results. Sometimes we're using different outcome measures at our different centers, and it's really difficult to study low frequency like partial hand amputations, or maybe not as common levels of amputation, knee disarticulation, or etiologies of amputation in Canada. A big headache that we're finding is just the challenges for funding. So it's difficult to attract from sources that should be interested. One would be Diabetes Canada. So there's no sort of limb loss arm of research funding from our diabetes groups. And we know that over 80% of our amputations in Canada are from diabetes. And there's no sort of dedicated limb loss funder. In spinal cord injury, they have the Rick Hansen Foundation, but we do not have sort of an amputation or limb loss funder in Canada. And unfortunately, sometimes we're not prioritized even at our own institutions. And so because amputation is a smaller population as far as numbers, we might not have the same sort of research center or funding support even in our institutions that we work in. A lot of sort of prosthetic componentry based groups, again, I think we need to do better in sort of interacting and combining the clinical research and the prosthetic components. We have improved somewhat, and so I'm going to say that we are sort of reaching out, and I think OAC has helped this. We funded Sandra Hitzig's project a few years ago, and that resulted in a multi-center research initiative. We're now sort of trying to build a national research collaborative and pitching for grants sort of with individuals from across the country, and looking outside of sort of our traditional groups, sort of engaging more acute care or surgical partners to just build in Canada. So the future, and we did have a consensus conference in May 2019, and I look at this and sort of think about how long this pandemic has gone on, but definitely this was pre-pandemic. I wish that we were in person today and didn't have to face sort of technical challenges, but we did a consensus conference just sort of looking at national research priorities. We had 38 participants from multiple backgrounds. We had physiatry, we had physio, OT, social work, we had surgeons, we had podiatrists, and we also had individuals with limb loss. We were primarily in Ontario because the conference was held in Toronto, but we did get feedback from across the country, and we used a Delphi process to set research priorities going forward in Canada for limb loss. The meeting was funded by CHR, and we were able to do a publication after we had the meeting in May 2019. So this is available online, and really we've sort of, and all the people listed were at the meeting and sort of started to develop really a national stance on limb loss research in Canada and how do we move forward. We came up with 3 priorities, which we really feel are critical to move things forward, improve research and clinical care in limb loss in Canada. One is that we don't know where we are. We have no database, and our keynote speaker might speak on this, but they've just started a national database in the US. It would be nice for us to mimic this and sort of have the same thing in Canada. And to do this, I think we need to set sort of the same outcome measures, at least similar outcome measures to obtain in our centers, so that we have a nice national data set to drive sort of future research endeavors. And then our second was, you know, we have a lot of challenges getting funding, not for research, but also for clinical care, for prosthetics for our patients. So I think we really need to know the health economic data to illustrate the burden of amputation to the healthcare system and patients, and really find out, you know, what is most cost effective, what patients are doing better and why, and really present to our sort of funders in Canada, which is publicly funded, that, you know, rehab may be more cost effective than no rehab if a patient is sort of bouncing back and forth between their emergency department and really struggling isolated at home. The third one ties into the first one, is developing a national database. We really think we need to keep working on outcome measures in Canada, identifying and validating outcome measures that we can use across the country. So next steps, we would wish to develop sort of an OAC website list of researchers, again, to sort of build collaboration, multi-center projects, and also collaborations between prosthetic groups and clinical groups. And if you are interested in sort of joining our website list of researchers, please reach out. You can email us. We are active on Twitter, and we do post a lot of our members' sort of research initiatives throughout the year, not only just around our conferences. So again, sorry, Mike, I'm sure you can run through the slides, but I think we just have a bit of time for discussion. I'm going to stop my screen share so I can actually see your faces, because when we share our screen here, I can't see anybody's video. And I just wanted to sort of, you can put it in the Q&A, and I think Janet's going to moderate for Mike and I. But do you feel that these are good priorities to push forward? Has anybody had any sort of funding successes or suggestions, or any other sort of general comments about building sort of a national limb loss research momentum in Canada? Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and I'm sure, Mike, you're there in the background, and I do see a question in the Q&A, and just a reminder that if you have questions for the presenters, please to type them into the Q&A. So the first question we have from Sander is, how strong do you feel the connections are among the continuum of care, acute, rehab, and community? What do you think needs to be done to strengthen these relationships?
So I know myself, I mean, it helps. I think a lot of our rehab centers were gobbled up but have merged with acute care. So I actually have a few joint sort of research projects, but I think the more we sort of align with our surgical partners, the better, and that will help. But I think what is really lacking in Ontario and Canada is more of the connections with the community providers. So really, you know, building on how patients do once they're home from rehab, once they're home from surgery. And I think that's probably a weakness that's ongoing, at least in Ontario, and I would assume probably throughout Canada, but I don't know what Mike thinks.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but.
We can hear you, Mike. You're good now.
Yeah,
okay,
we can hear
thanks.
you, and I always say to my students, Mike helps me with teaching the physio students, and I always say, save the difficult questions for Mike, because he's like a walking encyclopedia. Anyway, are there any more questions for Mike or Amanda? That was a fantastic talk, and some great ideas for some collaborative efforts across the country. And yes, certainly we should move forward on these things.
Great. So I just see a few things in the chat. There was a mention the WARAMPS does have a database. So yeah, I think, you know, we have had the WARAMPS at the last OAC, and I believe there some members are attending today. So I think that's another opportunity to connect with. And then
in the
Liz,
Q&A, yeah, there's another question in the Q&A. Do you see this as a method of looking at patients over time, fitted and non-fitted? From Heather.
So as far as studying patients, like just seeing non-prosthetic versus prosthetic, I think it's a weakness in Canada. I think if we look at our research, a lot of it is prosthetic research. I think the patients that are not fit with devices is a population, and I think it's something that we need to look into, particularly with health economics and cost of care. But Mike, what do you think about non-prosthetic versus prosthetic research?
Mike, you'll have to unmute your microphone there. Can you see the button to unmute your mic at the bottom of the screen? We can't hear you.
Yeah, Mike, just to confirm, there's kind of a white button, or it might be a red button at the bottom of your screen, and it's just to the right of the cam on button. If you can press that, it should bring you up.
Meanwhile, there is another question in the tab, Q&A, that I'll get to if we don't get Mike back on the screen. I'll give him a moment. He's there somewhere. So Mike, if you look for the camera on and the mic on. At my screen, it's green. So when it's on, it's green. When it's off, it's red. Sometimes.
Yeah. I think we have only a time for like a minute, Janet. So I was just going to address Jacqueline's question. Yeah. So whether or not we should start reaching out to OPC and ISPO and sort of other groups, I think we need to. I think we continue to sort of be very siloed in our research and sort of approaches, but to build a national database, you know, we need a lot of support. And I think it's encouraging to see so many different members sort of join today, and hopefully we can build after today to sort of think about, you know, how can we really get this done. And, you know, we did apply for a grant to build a database, but weren't successful in 2020. But I think, you know, it's just building the efforts, and we need something in Canada to really push forward and improve care and research.
And also maybe we have a chance for one more question. From Stephanie, a challenge with participation in research can be getting through the ethics process in each individual organization. What are your thoughts and suggestions to expedite this process?
So I think it's always good, especially if we're doing a multi-site trial for, you know, one institution will get ethics approval and then it can expedite the other centers. We've done that in the past, but it might be something that we think about even at a future OAC is just doing a session on research ethics and sort of getting some feedback on what the challenges have been as far as like writing or submitting or common sort of art. Stephanie, that's often a headache for many people is how can I conduct my research if it takes like so long to get ethics approval or my center to get the ethics approval. So yeah, I think something for us to think about as a group in OAAC and future sort of conferences.
And also just one more request in the Q&A to please send out by email all connections to OAAC, including the website and Twitter feed, Facebook,
sure.
etc.
Well, once I hop off, I'll enter that all in the chat for everyone.
Great, thank you. And that's all the questions I see. Thank you, Amanda Mayo, Dr. Amanda Mayo and Dr. Michael Devlin. I know you're there somewhere. And some great questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
So, thank you. And I'm pleased next to introduce our Consumer keynote speakers, Chris Marshall and Andreazwallow, our President and Vice President of the Amputee Coalition of Canada. Both Chris and Andrea are persons with lived experience with limb loss and have been tireless advocates for the limb loss community. And we look forward to hearing about their efforts and vision on how the Amputee Coalition of Canada will help strengthen connections across the country.
Good morning.
Hello. I'm just making sure you can hear me. I was having some trouble with the microphone.
I can hear you, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Janet, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Chris.
Okay. Then we'll get underway right away. So first of all, good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending and listening, because today we're all being part of a solution in the advancement of our community, and I'd love to thank everybody that's here. It warms my heart so many times to see so many people involved in the amputee community, whether able-bodied or disabled, helping us move forward. The first thing I'd like to do, and one of the most important things, is give you a little bit of a personal journey so that you know where I'm coming from. So my name is Chris Marshall. At the age of 28, I was involved in a workplace accident, a fall from a roof. Among multiple traumas, the worst of all led to a below-knee amputation. This was in the year of 2000, and at the time of the accident, I was never told about, nor visited by, or given the option to meet or interact with someone living with or experienced in limb difference. My wife and I were left to navigate this world and challenges alone. I spent weeks in the hospital. I felt alone. The anxiety was overwhelming. I spent the next portion of my life trying to deal with all the changes, learning to live with my disability. I have been into the darkest of places contemplating my existence. I've also been on top of the world, feeling like I've mastered this new life. It took a lot of time later, a lot of years later, before I felt strong enough to actually give back to my community. And I started visiting, I started counseling amputees, post and pre-surgery. And I felt strong enough about what was going on that in the year of 2019, I left my accident employer and I began a program in Manitoba called Limb Loss, where my only goal was to get a program together that was accepted by the healthcare community, where we could go and actually get invited into hospitals and meet with people and talk to people, and they knew that that we were there, that there was somebody just like them. Towards the end of 2019, I was brought to the board of the ACC. So that's a little bit of my story and where I come from and what's going to happen now. So now I'd like to introduce you to the Vice President of the ACC, Andreazwallow.
Good morning, everybody. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us. It's a real honor to be a part of this process. I've been doing this much longer than Chris has as an amputee, and I've seen a lot of change over many years. So good morning again. My name is Andreazwallow. I'm a West Coast Canadian mother, teacher, advocate for amputees. I'm approaching 33 years of life with one leg, and having seen and experienced many sides of limb loss. Some of these very dark days, just like Chris was mentioning, really dark and heavy, and many others a blessing and joy, and all of it are valuable in some capacity, and has kind of gotten me where I am today. So my accident started, I was on a motorcycle ride on a balmy summer evening, and it altered the 16-year-old girl's dreams in a heartbeat. And at that time, living in a small town, navigating the consequences was the loneliest I've ever felt. And there really was no support back then. So one of the saving graces for me in all of this was when my mother registered me for the CHAMP program through the War Amps of Canada. I had 2 years. I was 16. At age 18, you age out. So I had 2 years of being welcome to participate in regional conferences and some local events. And I heard the message in those 2 years, you are not alone. And the magic of this sentiment is not only did I hear it, but I truly felt it. And the connections and solidarity of a family that understood the realities of life with limb loss imprinted on me and made me feel that I belonged. So in the years that followed as an adult, once I aged out, this sense of connection was never experienced in the same context, as nothing for adult amputees existed in Canada. Until it was an introduction to the Amputee Coalition of America's National Conference in 2018 in Arizona that changed that. I had no idea it even existed up to that point. So this was a really powerful, poignant reminder of the way a connection within this unique community has the ability to transform loss into gain and provide deeper benefits to many, and simply just knowing each other. Chris?
Thanks. So, little brief intro into the ACC. The Amputee Coalition of Canada was established in 2008 as a nonprofit organization. The Amputee Coalition of Canada was created to improve the quality of life of persons with limb loss in their communities by providing education and opportunities to gain skills, lessons, and coping techniques that increase confidence, connectiveness, and the sense of belonging. Our mission statement is to simply empower our Canadian limb loss community through connection, resources, education, and peer support. So a quick update. In 2019, the ACC started to undertake a huge change in rebranding. A new board was built that more represents our community. A number of new members have been voted in that all live with a specific level of limb difference. We believe now it has made us a more viable and more connected program to our community. Our vision is we seek to be the collaborative leader in Canada, connecting our communities and resources in services and support for all of those living with limb loss across our nation. Now, one of our most important programs we offer is the peer support program. Now, I understand for most of you, this may be new that the ACC is here, or maybe you are from past. I know myself became frustrated with the ACC. It was stagnant. It was in a little bit of disarray. Nothing was really happening for a lot of years. The website never really changed. But the peer support program did not get the exposure that it needed to do what it needs to do, which is why I created the limb loss program in Manitoba. And that peer support program is one of the biggest, most important and influential programs that we offer. And Andrea is the national coordinator of that program, and she will explain to you a bit more about what our program has to offer.
So Peer Visitor Program is modeled after the Amputee Coalition of America's very successful program. And it works with the goals and objectives of rehabilitation of an individual's limb loss and is complementary to the intentions of Canada's healthcare professionals. Each training session is led by certified trainers who have followed a full day program subsidized by us, ACC, and is normally a combination of a person with amputation and a healthcare professional. ACC provides the Peer Visitor Program in both English and French at no charge to individuals with limb loss, as all costs for the program, training, and materials are covered by the coalition. No other organization in Canada offers this program or a service of this nature. Sweeping across the country, we currently have 15 regional reps, and these are our first contacts and coordinators for requests. We have 66 peer visitor trainers, and these are individuals trained to teach the program. And we have 346 trained peer visitors. These are our individuals who conduct the in-person visits to new amputees. We field requests often for more training opportunities and actually can't keep up to the demand. Although peer visits were usually conducted for individuals in hospitals, telephone peer visits have been very successful in the past and have helped meet the challenge of covering Canada's vast geographic territory. And this format has obviously become even more pertinent during the pandemic because our tried and true ways of reaching out to others has been impossible. So although peer visits have continued to a lesser extent and occurred virtually this year, a powerful visual of seeing another amputee mobile is part of what makes this program special. It provides hope in a lonely and frightening place where it is often hard to find. And as a volunteer nonprofit organization for amputees, we rely on each other to lift up our community in ways that are often missed and lacking in provincial and national systems. Chris, back to you.
So that brings the next topic of the power of the community. Andrea and I have both seen conclusively that a community program will greatly improve the outcomes. And the most important thing is it's at no cost to our healthcare system as the coalition funds all of these programs. Now in the US, it's a bit different. You pay to become a trainer, you pay to become a peer visitor, which offsets the cost, but here we don't do that. That's why we can offer this at no cost to the healthcare system, because that's one of the most important things. When people are at their most vulnerable, to ask them for money is tough. I personally have witnessed firsthand through the limb loss education days we had here in Winnipeg, how powerful it is when a new amputee who's never met another will walk into a room and see somebody who looks like them, who has dealt with the same challenges, had the same experience, had the same pain. It has reduced people to tears on entry inside the room. It brings a relief. It brings a sense of community and belonging, which they didn't have before. But most of all, it allows people to know that others have survived and they are okay. And that is a huge weight off somebody's psyche when they see somebody that has conquered the next step. And I think that's the most important thing about community. Andrea has a little bit more to say about community.
Yeah. I believe in this so strongly. Coming back after COVID will undoubtedly look different for all of us, but interestingly, what the following year has reaffirmed for many amputees is that we're previously skilled in the challenges of isolation, limitations, depression, and access that overall society has faced this year. These have been common experiences for many of us in our pre-pandemic daily lives. And if there's anything that we have all learned during this time, it's that connection is an anchor in a world turned upside down. And it is the intimate and crucial part of feeling understood is connection. So through this understanding and being heard, we feel supported. And this plants seeds for empowerment, self-advocacy, and ultimately acceptance in this life of living with limb loss. And what appears originally as a gaping loss can be redefined as a life that is altered, but manageable and fulfilling, and going from surviving to thriving. So what can bridge one of these gaps is the building of relationships and investing in the value of cohesiveness to each other and a connection to our community. As physical needs are prioritized in limb loss, good mental health practices such as volunteering, social inclusion, and belonging to community are also a necessary component of adapting and building resiliency for quality of life. Benefits of this of connecting with each other have such a reciprocal nature when we support each other, and are really difficult to duplicate. The amputees that we have met, trained with, and called on for visits experience a deeper sense of self-worth, connection, and confidence volunteering as peer visitors, and their lived experience, which may have felt burdensome at times to their own support network, thus transforms by way of offering support and hope to others. It's a feedback loop that can be incredibly beneficial to both new amputee and a seasoned amputee, wherever either may be on their journey. And as an individual, I sit here amongst you really aware of our different stories and backgrounds, but I'm here to tell you that for over 30 years of encouraging and listening to other amputees, we are most definitely stronger and healthier overall when being supported by others who have also walked the path. And we often use the term stronger together because it applies. And so ACC's mission has always been to support individuals through service, support, and education. But what we need to keep in the forefront as being vitally important is to encourage the surrounding network through communication, connection, and community. The more we fill in the gaps to collaborate and connect, the more we empower our community to lead for themselves and each other. So thank you all for being part of the team that helps us to move forward with strength, compassion, and dignity.
So just to wrap things up, the ACC is currently in a state of rebuild. We're trying to put all the pieces together again from what once was to what should be now. And we're calling on all of you. We cannot do this by ourselves. We need all of us to become allies in the community. We need you to encourage communication, dialogue between healthcare providers and patients. We have to share our resources, expand the knowledge of what's available to the disabled community in your area or your province. We need to highlight those specifically that represent amputees. We need to enlist and collaborate with organizations that provide adaptive physical opportunities to disabled individuals. One of the biggest hurdles we often face is learning to trust our body and believe it. It is capable of activities done before amputation, and we can do those again. We need to support opportunities for patients to meet others in the area, and I think that's the biggest key that you guys need to take away, is that when people see other people, the anxiety seems to fade away. I know that from my own personal experience, when I get into a pre-surgery appointment, I can lower that level of anxiety. These peer visitors can lower that level of anxiety. So when they come out, they've already witnessed that somebody has been done. When I see people post-surgery, I feel that we've lost a bit. We can still gain it back, but we've lost a bit. I totally believe that together we can overcome the anxiety. We can build this education and knowledge. And that's the most important thing. We are all working together. So at this point, we'd like to thank you for all of your help, all of your guidance, and for dedicating your lives to make amputees' lives better. Thank you, and we'll welcome any questions.
Thank you, Chris and Andrea, for your passion, for all that you do, and in sharing this vision with bringing people together with limb loss across the country, really, and in communities too. And that's, yes, stronger together. I like that. So we might have a time for a couple of questions. There's some comments in the chat with a lot of support, started by Ricardo. Thank you both for all your work. This is such an important role, and I would echo that. I think we would all echo that. I frequently tell our amputees about this program, especially new amputees. Great work.
Thank you.
Peer contact is a fundamental component of care, and I have so many stories of that. And I often my limb loss guests will get some of my patients to do things I can't do, and I just see new patients that experience limb loss, just their lives light up when they see somebody that has been going through those challenges and is a little bit further along their journey. So are there any questions? Okay, so see a couple of questions. How does an amputee become a peer visitor? From Jay.
The first thing you can do is you contact us, and we will put you in contact with Andrea, and from there she'll take it away.
And we'll hope that this world opens up so we can start providing opportunities in person.
But I think the key, Janet, is one quick thing is we have to be very wary of peer visitors. It's definitely a very difficult task. I remember my first peer visit. When I walked into that room, I thought I was strong, but the minute I started talking about my accident, I became extremely vulnerable, and it was tough. So we like to think, and we're not pegging this into a square hole, but we want to make sure that amputees are a little bit mature into their amputation. We do have a lot of people that want to help, and we understand that. But some 6-7 months outside of we don't believe that they're ready for that yet. They have to be a little bit more mature in their amputation in order to take on a role like this. This is a big role, being a peer visitor to somebody that is in that state.
Yeah, and it's very important, right, to have a good visit, especially with somebody new. And there is some training involved. And would they contact you through the website or that, just to know what's happening? And I think usually, if I remember correctly, often people are express an interest, but then you're kind of invited to partake in that training as well. As Chris said, when you're a bit mature. Well, thank you both again. Is there any other questions I missed? How is it working currently with virtual supports? I can see this as a ongoing option in rural areas where inpatient visits are difficult.
Andrea, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we have been providing virtual support, and it's worked out pretty well. It took a while to get through the kinks of things, but it's there and it is possible. Nice thing is still the face-to-face FaceTime is helpful. So it has worked, and we will always use it when it is a situation where it's remote. So there is that. Yeah, but nothing beats the in-person experience.
And is there anything coming new on the website? I think somebody was saying that something's out of date.
This is a trick question, right?
Yeah. A question that we get all the time. Yes, we're actually in talks with a new media representative that to rebuild the website, give it a fresh look, give it a fresh undertakings to represent the situation of today. So yes, that is the next step. One of the most important things, though, is we have to maintain our peer program. So yes, we are all working hard to do that. We have a great team behind us with the membership of the board there. So we are doing well.
Yeah, so bear with us, stick with us, and as we grow and as we revitalize this.
And I think
we are there. We're here for everybody.
Great. And we're near the end. You see, this is a method of looking at patients over time. So, oh, sorry, I think that's from a previous thing. Sorry if I've missed some questions. Yeah, that's great. And so thank you again, Chris and Andrea. And
thank you.
Look forward to chatting with you later. So for our plenary session, It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Audrey Zucker-Levin, who is professor at the University of Saskatchewan and who has a clinical background as a physical therapist. Dr. Zucker-Levin's work is focused on improving function and outcomes in people with limb loss by using a patient-oriented approach to her work. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you. Okay, let me get my screen sharing. All right. All right. I just need a verbal, because I don't see anything other than my PowerPoint, that you can hear me and you can see my slides.
Hey there, Audrey. Just confirming we can see and hear you.
Am I good to go?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Hold on.
Hi there, Audrey. Hopefully you can hear me. If you can, you're good to go.
I'm good
Janet,
to
if not, if you can confirm.
Hi, Audrey. I can hear you. It's Janet, and I can see your slides, so please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I
When you're ready.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking the OAAC conference organizers for the invitation to present our work on gaining the patient perspectives to improve amputee care in Saskatchewan. It's a pleasure to be here. It truly is. I'd like to acknowledge, to begin with, that I work and live on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respects to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. I have no conflicts to share for this presentation. First, a little bit of background. I am a physical therapist, as mentioned. I'm a sidewalk scientist. I'm interested in improving or fighting amputees. Been in for years, but in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Memphis, Tennessee, and I'll tell you that Saskatchewan is cold and the healthcare is very different. If you can see behind me, you can identify I'm not in Saskatchewan. I'm actually in Memphis, Tennessee right now. So I'm glad this is all working out. Joining me shortly after my arrival in Saskatoon was Sunny Collins. She was a PhD student from Memphis, and I needed to have some collaborations and contacts prior to her arrival to ensure she would basically graduate on time. That was my big priority when I first arrived, bringing a student with me. I had access to all the bells and whistles in the 3D motion capture lab, but I really felt that I wanted to go in a different direction. I knew a little bit about patient-oriented research, but never fully embraced the concept. So I figured it was a good time to start. I mean, how hard can it really be? I've worked with healthcare providers for 30 some odd years. So yeah, I can pretty much do it. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. So I started my northern adventure by talking to the patients and care providers to figure out the lay of the land specifically for the person affected by limb loss in Saskatoon. So I'm going to start by sort of giving you a definition of patient-oriented research. This one is from CIHR, and so basically patient-oriented research refers to a continuum of research that engages patients as partners, and that's the key part there. It focuses on patient-identified priorities and improves patient outcomes. So it's conducted by a multidisciplinary team in partnership with relevant stakeholders, and you could read the rest. But the key here is that the patient identifies the priorities that are important to them and that they want to see perhaps progress forward. So, okay, sounds doable. So I went to the Saskatchewan Center for Patient-Oriented Research and I said, looked on their website and I found this quote, which I thought was really quite interesting. This quote is from Jordan Woodsworth, and Jordan Woodsworth is a veterinarian, and I actually had met her while I first arrived because I brought with me a 14-and-a-half-year-old golden retriever, but that's a whole nother story. So I read this quote: if we're doing patient-oriented research, it should lead to more useful outcomes because you're focused on things that are actually important for the target knowledge user. So patient doesn't mean patient, because unless she's truly a Dr. Doolittle, she's not talking to her patients, she's talking to the care providers of the patients. And we could argue to say that your dog is your child, so, or your pet is your child. So she's doing patient-oriented research in veterinary care. So I started talking with her, gave me some direction, and we started. The first team was the academic team. So this includes researchers who indirectly touched loss. It was made up of podiatrists, prosthetists, therapists, social workers. We had a nurse that was on the team, and then students at all different levels. Included in this group were policy influencers. So those were usually the physicians, also help with policy. One of the physical therapists was working in policy in Saskatchewan for physical therapy. So that was the academic team. We then structured a patient team. So within the patient team, we called this the PORT, the Patient-Oriented Research Team. And this was really like our go-to group of people. These people were like the real guiders in what they felt needed to be focused on. So it included people with amputation, caregivers of people with limb loss. We have a mom of a young child with a congenital limb difference. The group members themselves had different levels of amputation, different causes of amputation. People had varied socioeconomic status, varied age, and varied cultural backgrounds, which I'm learning is so important in Saskatoon specifically. It was really interesting though, and not known at the time that we formed this specific group, that among his organization that supported people with physical limitations, he also had a limb loss. A retired social worker involved in Indigenous care. So this group was really sort of our direction group, and we found out this information, we would come back to them for further discussion and perhaps ideas for projects to do. Then we made a community group. So this is our third group. So this is our support group. This group was open to anyone. We did advertisements. We told all of the social workers. We told all of the hospitals. We really tried to kind of blitz the area with, we're starting a support group for people with limb loss. Everybody is welcome to come. So it's for anybody touched with limb loss. So we met quarterly. We've had some limits with COVID, but we'll get back to that. And we usually start with an educational component and then an open discussion to talk about issues affecting the community. It's a really interesting, diverse group. They have a lot to say, and they like talking about things that are affecting them. As Chris and Andrea mentioned, this really epitomizes how important this community support is for them, because on our first meeting, we were worried that we would have 10 people show up. I mean, we were happy to have 10 people if that was the number. People were coming in. We had almost 50 people at our very first meeting. We were rolling out tables and chairs, and fortunately we had enough capacity to seat everybody in the room, but that was great to see. So 3 teams were established, and among the teams, we had fluidity. So patients in the academic group were also in the PORT group, people in the academic and PORT groups were in the community group, and people in the community group moved around into the PORT group. So this really facilitated communication among the groups. And the issue was that once you're in a meeting group, everything is held here. If your physician, who perhaps you weren't very happy with, is in that academic group and you were invited into the PORT team, and he was also in the PORT group, even if you said negative things about it, it was only staying there, and it was all for constructive use. So what did we do? Oh, gosh. Well, we set up a whole bunch of meetings. We set up among group meetings, between group meetings. We set up evening meetings, daytime meetings. We went crazy. We went meetings all over to talk to people. And it was a true team effort that I couldn't have done alone, to see what the voice was for people who are working with the amputee community, who are among the amputee community, and supporters of the amputee community. So after all of the discussion, went back to the PORT team, and we said, let's look at the top issues. So the top issues identified by the PORT team were here, and I will kind of go through each one individually shortly. We took the biggest concerns that were identified by PORT, went to the Who Needs 20 group and to the academic group, and we did use the Delphi technique to determine these top needs. First, the positives, okay? People are very happy with the care provided in Saskatchewan. Fantastic. Everyone is working hard. All of the supporters, the physicians, the patients, everyone is identified as working hard. Everyone wants to improve outcomes. And the healthcare providers, they really care. Those were the positives. So these are great things to start a base on. But there were some gaps that need to be filled. So I'm going to individually describe these in the next couple of slides. First, communication gap. So this is not just patient to healthcare provider, which was sort of interesting to find out, but among the healthcare providers themselves. For example, the social workers and the acute care therapists didn't realize prosthetic intervention might take months, not weeks, as they had originally thought. So this sparked the change to order home healthcare services for patients who were being discharged home to continue their care and to make sure that when they were ready for prosthetic intervention, if appropriate, that they would be able to be in hopefully top shape so that they could work with a prosthesis. The other thing was the word patient. The word itself is really a negative word, at least here. They're people living with limb loss. Now, we can all say, yeah, well, of course. But the problem is that PORT, Patient-Oriented Research, or POR, or SCIPR, Saskatchewan Center for Patient-Oriented Research, they absolutely hate that. So communication is important, and perhaps talking to those above us to see if we can change the language would be helpful. We did publish on this process and our findings, and they could be found in Physiotherapy Canada for more information about that. The second need, I don't know what I just said, the need for more education. We're tackling this in a few ways. First, when we have our Who Needs 20 meetings, we always have an educational piece, some lecture that happens, some information that's patient-driven, that's what is it that you want to learn at our next meeting, and we usually get input, and then we do our best to accommodate for them. So we fill the gap there for patient education, although they hate the word patient, so we fill the gap there, and then we usually do a fun activity after that education. To educate the healthcare providers, we started a lecture series sponsored by the Saskatchewan Physiotherapy Association. This has been viewed by therapists, physicians, residents, anybody who wants to watch this, it's available. You can just contact me and I can get you hooked up with that. We're also working among the academic team on a single manual that we can provide to people who are new experiencing limb loss, or people who are well into their limb loss journey, but are really not sure what their next steps should be, because communication, as I've identified, can be an issue. So this is an effort that is ongoing, and hopefully we'll have a result soon. The next thing, and Chris and Andrea really talked about this incredibly pertinently, the need for peer support. This was the most identified issue among our participants. And in our very first Who Needs 20 meeting, 50 people showing up, this really just, drives this comment in. So what did I do about this? Well, I contacted the ACC, and I see I have to update my logo there, but I contacted and hounded and hounded and hounded the ACC. This is before Chris and Andrea were there. I know it would be much smoother. And we were able to get a trainer to come down, and we trained 14 people to be peer supporters. Now, Chris and Andrea, I'm going to be finding you at our breakout session, because I do need to talk to you about this, because we do have some problems. There is we're having difficulty linking these supporters with the new amputees, and they're going basically through me at Who Needs 20, which I'm happy to do, but I do have a day job, so doing this is not an easy task. So I do need to contact you about how to make this a bit smoother. But we have 14 peer-trained visitors, and they are so ready to start interacting with new people. The next need, the need to understand the unique statistics of Saskatchewan. In January 2021, the Saskatchewan population was 1,178,000 odd people. Saskatchewan is among the provinces with the largest Indigenous population, with Métis and First Nation and Inuit making up approximately 18% of the population, and this number is expected to grow rapidly over the next decade. All of the groups, all three groups, were interested in finding out if amputation rates differ between Indigenous residents and non-Indigenous residents. Also, we wondered how Saskatchewan compares to other provinces and countries. So to address this, I went back to Skipper, and we were so fortunate to engage Dr. Samuel Essien. He's a postdoctoral fellow currently working with us, and he embraced the question posed by the patients and has been working with Health Quality Council mining data, and his findings are soon to be published. He has a poster here, so please take a moment to go check out his poster. But I will tell you that this area has really blossomed. Currently, we're involved in a Saskatchewan Health Research Center application to identify how culturally sensitive education can be established to prevent the complications of diabetes. And as we know, limb loss is the leading diabetes is among the leading causes of limb loss. The need to prevent limb amputation. Well, this is a big one and so important, and the focus of many people around the world. So we identify that Saskatchewan can do a little piece in this, but we are definitely not going to cure this. But so we started a project to look at total force and segmental force under the intact limb in people with plantar wounds to determine which walking aid would best improve wound healing and decrease the risk of abnormal loading on the stance limb. We published a preliminary paper identifying the force under the stance foot in healthy older adults, and this is some of the results here, while using different walking aids. And so we're going to sort of use this as a platform for the current study. Kamir Goshiri, he's my current postdoc, and David Kingston are helping us work on this project. And they also have a poster that I encourage you to go explore this afternoon on a different project that they're working on. Finally, they need to be a voice in national amputee issues. So thank you for inviting me here. I think this is a huge first step. We feel honored to be included in the number of national initiatives. We were included in 3 pan-Canadian grants, and I thank you for that. 2 were scored just below the funding line, but the 3rd time's a charm. And we have that SHRC application that was funded that we are proud to be part of. And so things are definitely in Saskatchewan moving in the right direction. Everybody is supportive. We have the voice of the patients here. So we would love to continue to participate. I'd like to just take one more minute to describe one other need that was identified that I haven't talked about. And that was support or interventions for parents of children with amputation or congenital limb loss. They asked about transitions into schooling, educating peers, educating teachers, and they've been to WARAMPs, they've been to some other support groups, but they felt that there is more need that perhaps isn't being addressed. Our problem, which is a good problem, is that we have few children with limb difference here in Saskatchewan. I think it's 1%, and if we look at our numbers, it's just not a huge number to be able to sort of address some of our foci in that direction. So that is something that also has been identified. So basically, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. We are really working to get things moving here in Saskatchewan, and I would like to just take a moment to thank some of my supporters and of course my colleagues that have helped me with all of this. Couldn't have done it without you, and let's work together. end my Okay, I am back. But short, sweet, and to the point, I hope.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for your presentation. I think we have time for a couple of questions. I see one in the chat, in the Q&A, sorry, and please a reminder to type your questions in the Q&A. From Crystal, what were the 3 gait aids in your study, wheeling to healing?
Great, thank you. So, what we found is that when someone has a limb loss, they are given a walker or crutches. Now, oftentimes, as we all know, these people have been moderately sedentary, trying to perhaps heal the cause that might be leading to that amputation, that diabetic foot ulcer. And so oftentimes walking with crutches, walking with a walker is walking with your arms, and that can be incredibly difficult. So we are exploring the use of that wheeled knee walker in both people who already have an amputation at any point below the knee. So it could be a single toe that they're losing, but they're not walking more than an hour a day, which actually might be the entire population in the world, not walking an hour a day. But if you walk less than an hour a day and you have any amputation, transtibial all the way down the foot, we're providing them with wheeled knee walkers, and we're comparing the knee walker to crutches to a walker. And then somebody also suggested that we do sort of the, when you sit in a wheelchair and you push with your foot, so so perhaps you have it underneath the foot, rear foot, forefoot, to determine if walking with one of these devices might actually increase the forces, which then would be increasing the risk of loss of the intact limb in hopes of healing the altered limb. So this is really a great project that we've been working on. We have been on hold because of COVID, but we're working on getting it moving forward. So the published paper is in adults over 50 years of age, because we'd like to use those as comparisons to the people who have limb loss. I hope that answered the question.
I think so, yes. And here at West Park, we've been using the iWalk quite a lot with some of our patients too.
Yeah, so the iWalk has some balance issues we found. So then they would, so yes, we considered using that also. And I think we just have to look at the population.
Right. Yes, from Mike Payne, great talk. Given the differences in funding for prosthetic components and these insights, if this would change the priorities from your multiple focus groups. Thank you.
Yes. So, so I arrived in Canada 4 years ago, and I had to exponentially learn healthcare, provision of walking aids, and to different groups. So my perception was there was one healthcare system, right? I was wrong. So the healthcare, the components covered for prostheses in Saskatchewan is excellent. Some diverse groups, like the Indigenous population who are covered under NIHB, I found do not have the same prosthetic options as those covered under the general population in Saskatchewan. So there are some differences there, but just because there are differences there, and we're actually looking at this as one of another patient-oriented focus, just because there are differences within their coverage, we're not confident that those differences are producing changes or different prescribing characteristics. So for example, computer-operated knees. Well, just because you can prescribe a computer-operated knee doesn't mean that people are getting computer-operated knees or controlled knees. So the Indigenous population covered under NIHB apparently doesn't have coverage for that, nor do they have coverage for myoelectric upper extremity prostheses. But how many myoelectrics are really being prescribed and delivered and used by the population? So we are looking at those differences among different populations to see if there's anything. But overall, I have to admit, one of the fears of the Port team of my actually doing this presentation was that I would tell everybody how great our prosthetic coverage is and it would be cut back. I said, I don't think I have that much influence in the world, so I think we're okay.
And just one more question, is the wheeled walker publicly funded for patients that need it? And I don't think
So
it
it
is.
depends, it depends. So I'm gonna give an interesting story. One of my former students who graduated last year contacted me, and she's working up north with an indigenous population. She has a patient with a limb loss, and she's got a transtibial amputation on one side, a transmet on the other, and she just had mastectomy surgery 3 weeks previously. Crutches, it's not gonna happen. A walker, it's not gonna happen. So she could not get funding for this person to get a wheeled knee walker, not even rental of a wheeled knee walker. So I'm hoping that the results of our study, if we can show improved physical function, maybe decreased wound healing, increased wound healing, that would be bad, decreased risk of ulceration of the stance limb, perhaps we can drive the policymakers to then have funding for those wheeled knee walkers, because they are more expensive than crutches, but they're not that expensive. They're not thousands of dollars like a power chair. They're, just a few $100s. So I'm hoping that we can move in the right direction.
Thank you, Dr. Zuckerlevin, for your presentation, and thank you for highlighting the centrality of our patients in our approach to care. It's so important. Before we go for our morning break, here's a message from one of our sponsors, Thomson Reuters. Thank you. And I'll be back shortly. Hello, everyone, again. So thank you. Our sessions will resume. I think we're going to take a couple of minutes break now. So we'll resume at about 11:26. In the meantime, you can please visit the exhibitors hall. You will find the exhibitor building at the bottom right of the floor plan when we return to conversation mode. Also, please don't forget to complete the executive scavenger hunt in order to be eligible for the grand prize draw of $100 PC brand e-gift card. You can find the link for the scavenger hunt at the bottom of your screen once we return to the conversation mode. And after the break, please find your way to the concurrent sessions when we'll exit the broadcast and return to conversation mode. You'll see the green buttons along the sides of the floor plan. So you can see each topic and speaker by clicking on the box. And if it's the one you registered for or want to attend, then please just double click to join that session. And you can connect also with your friends and colleagues and show the speakers if you have any questions for them. And if you need any assistance, please message tech support in the chat. They are all very friendly and very helpful. And yeah, I don't know the answers to those questions. Will the breakout sessions be recorded, or is it the official charity in Canada? So maybe you can connect over the break. And I see it's already 11:26, so if we're okay, we'll do that in just a couple of minutes. So quick stretch and